Hey everybody, just Jesse here, welcoming you back into my garage, my man cave, for another day of accountability. Today was a day that I didn't really want to be accountable, but as always, my amazing wife asked me if I was going to do quiet time, and well, if you're asking me, then I need to do it. So here I am, another day of accountability, down in the books. It was rough. I just wanted to be lazy today, but all in all, I ended up reading 1 Peter chapter 5, looking at what Peter talks about as a leadership motive check. And today's Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. So getting into 1 Peter chapter 5, we have to see that this is the end of Peter's first letter, and this letter was written to wandering Christians throughout Asia. These were Christians that didn't have a home church. They were just nomads, really. This letter includes a motive check for Christians and leaders to use in governing their lives. Peter tells us to serve and to lead voluntarily for the will of God, not for selfish gains. So listen to Peter as he says to serve as an example, not as a Lord. Do you have what Peter's talking about? Let's go ahead and check our motives. The first one talks about when you lead, do you remember the example of Christ's suffering like verse 1 talks about? I know that Christ suffered in a multitude of different ways. He was tempted in every way that we were, or that we are, and he was able to come out flawless in that. So do I remember the example of Christ's sufferings, like dying on the cross and like all of the other times he was tempted, and the hunger he must have felt after 40 days? It just, things come to your mind when you start to think about it. And I don't know if every day, if we start to think, hey, what did Jesus go through that I'm going through right now? What did he feel like? What would I have felt like in his situation? Those are things that I don't normally do, but that I need to start implementing in my life. And this is really good as a motive check to see what my motives are as a Christian and as a leader. So the second one says, like in verse 2, do you shepherd out of obligation or out of privilege? We all have some sort of flock, whether it's friends or family or people you don't know online. We all are a shepherd in one way or another. So do we do it because we have to? Kind of like today with me, I didn't want to obviously come out and do my quiet time. I didn't want to be in God's Word right away. I just thought I could be lazy. Or do we do it out of privilege? And I have to think that today I didn't check that box off. Today was an obligation day, and it's something that I need to change because I do have the privilege of being in God's Word. It is readily available. I have in my man cave right now 3 Bibles, physical copies, and 1 digital copy on my phone. So I could literally be in God's Word wherever I want. And now in the house, there's 3 or 4 more Bibles. So I don't really have, I just don't have anything that I can say, yeah, I couldn't get to it today. It's just there. It's an excuse. So I need to check that box off every day. So the first one being remembering Christ's sufferings through his example. And then another one that I'm privileged in order to have a Bible in a free country that I can get into and read God's Word and really just be motivated from. So looking on into the third one, we're going to look at verse 2 again, and it's going to talk about serving. And when you serve, do you do so by the motivation of God's will or man's will? Do you do it? Are you a good example? Do you do it for, the praises of your friends? Do you look forward to people telling you did a good job? I mean, everybody wants to be told, hey, you did a good job. Um, but do we necessarily need that in our lives today? Like, the only one that the Bible tells us that we should be wondering if we're doing a good job is Jesus. So when we get to meet him and when we are face to face with him, are you going to hear that, good job, my faithful servant, well done? Now, does it matter if my friends say that? I think it's cool, but on the same level as Jesus, they'll never be on that level. So I need to remember that my motivation is for God's will and not to look cool for friends or people around. We're still going to look at verse 2 for this next one, and it's going to talk about ministering. But when you minister or witness, when you go out and share God's word, do you do so for your own personal gain, or do you do so because you're passionate about God? Do you do it because you have to? Do you do it because your other friends are doing it and they need somebody to go out there with? Really, you have to check yourself every day. Like, we need to remember Christ suffered and died for us and rose from the dead, and made it to where we don't need to, have sacrifices in order to work our way into heaven. We also are privileged as far as being able to shepherd people. It's not something that is like an obligation to us. We don't have to do it. We do it because we love God and we love the will of God, and we want to keep pushing that forward. So when we go out and when we talk to people about God, is it something because we have to? Is it forced upon us? And as it's not always forced upon you, but is it more of, are you willing to do it rather than forcing yourself, is I guess what I'm trying to say here. But we'll move on from that because I do know that a lot of times I don't minister or witness because I don't feel compelled to, and that's the wrong outcome to have there. So when influencing others, does your life speak clearly? Are you that good example? I want to say that I lead a pretty decent life, if I compare it to other people. But always, when put on the list of like Mother Teresa or the Apostle Peter or John the Baptist, I'm gonna fall short. But when I influence others in my life, and I can do this on a daily basis because all of us come across somebody that we contact that we're either friends with or we're family members or somebody that's looking up to us. Do you influence them in a good example for Christ? If you could say yes, check that off your motive checklist. But I know that for me, I don't choose that every day. I have a lot of bad days that I don't want to be around people, or people frustrate me, or I'm frustrated, so I make other people frustrate me. I just buy into that whole thing. So also another thing on the list that I need to work on. And then lastly, when sacrificing, not necessarily like animals or like they did in the Old Testament, but when sacrificing things that you decide to give up, can you wait for the ultimate reward, or do you need an ultimate payback? Do you do it because you want it right now? Like, oh, if I give it up now, I can, have it back tenfold. That's the wrong motive. If you give up what you give up now, it's for your ultimate reward in heaven. We are stewards of everything that God gives us, and if God tells us to move on that, we need to move on that, and we need to sacrifice for things. We need to be praying and sacrificing for things that are important to us, and for things that can ultimately lead your testimony to other people. They can ultimately build that testimony as well. So what I see in my own life is that I need to become a better example that shows God off all the time, not just caring if somebody will poke fun at me or persecute me. I have to remember that all of the examples that Jesus set before me were examples that I can go to when I'm struggling or when I don't know what to do. I can just literally go back to God's word and see what happens. And you have to remember that Jesus was tempted in every way that we're tempted. It's not like it's not like the devil came up with anything new between these last couple thousand years. He's not that smart. He just knows how to get into your life if you let him. If you give him the chance, he's got a big foot that'll kick that door in. So you have to remember, Jesus will knock at the door of your heart. The devil will try to kick it in. Which do you prefer? That's what you have to remember every day. So thanks for hanging out with me. I do always enjoy hanging out with you, even if it has become an obligation on a day. At the end of it, when I get into God's Word and when I leave this video for you to watch later on, it really just reminds me of how blessed we really are as people, and how blessed I am as a Christian in the place where I live, and in my home life as well. So if you liked what I'm talking about, go ahead and throw that thumbs up there. I do love to see those. If you think that I could be doing something a little bit better, or you just have a question for me, or you just want to talk, I'm here to listen, as well as put up a video for you. But I'm here for you guys, and go ahead and leave me a comment. If you think that what I talked about today could reach somebody in your circle, by all means, get this video to them as soon as possible. You can click that share link, and you can email it to them or text it to them or whatever, and just get it to them. Because if they're on your heart, that means that God is talking to you about them. So lastly, if you've come across my video and you don't know what I'm about, this is my attempt at being motivated to stay in God's Word every day, being accountable, as I've always struggled with finding accountability to keep me going in the right steps, whether it's not finding the right people in my life or not trusting God enough. But these videos are my vlog of what I have learned throughout the day that I read in the scripture. So obviously, if you've come across it and you're not subscribed, you definitely should subscribe. I do come out with a video every day except for Sunday. That is when I'm not being lazy. So I'm working on that, and I'm always working on myself, just as you guys should always work on yourselves. Always remember to be safe, go and grow, and God bless.